this is my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so with this episode, the Class 3 now only has a month to actually assassinate Korosensei, and this episode starts off with Korosensei catching up on all of the things he missed while they were all out trying to figure out how to save him. So, yeah, he not only does he celebrate the New Year and Christmas because nobody visited him over the winter break, and Fuwa actually is quick to realize that that's exactly what he's doing. He does ultimately remark that he still has a lot of more fun festivities to actually go into, pointing out that he needs to make up for as much time as possible, and that what better way to do that than by starting by celebrating all the holidays they didn't get to celebrate together. And all the students chuckle, and Nagisa can't help but remark that Korosensei can't help but remark to himself that Korosensei once again continues to live a mile a minute, quite literally, and remarks that he still is just as energetic as he always has been. But also it's February, and Nagisa is quick to point out that their deadline is fast approaching. As I said at the beginning of this review, they only have a month to kill Korosensei, or nothing, or things are going to go south for them. But also they now because the school year is coming to a close, everybody now has to worry about coming with ideas of where they want to go and what they want to do once they graduate, quote unquote. And everybody else goes off to talk about what they were doing, but Nagisa and his friends then proceed to stay behind and proceed to comment about what they want to do with their time. And Karma ultimately, while everybody else is kind of remarks that they want to go to the school of their dreams, Karma remarks that he just wants to stay in Kunigigaoka, because for a number of reasons. Not only one, he has the grace to go wherever he wants, but which he does point out is true, and that he could in theory go anywhere he wants with his grades. As he points out, he finds some sort of tragic irony in the fact that a guy they thought was exiled suddenly coming back to school and attending it full time, and he feels like that would be a satisfying conclusion to his arc. And he's not wrong, but also he points out that Gakushu Asano is there, and that he no other school would be able to offer him an academic rival as worthy as Gakushu. So ultimately his end goal is to just kind of stick it in everybody's nose that he's back in school when they thought he was exiled, and be able to ride over their downtrodden faces for like 3 years. And maybe get into an academic battle every once in a while with Gakushu. So yeah, overall, Karma just kind of wants what he wants because that's the kind of person he is. After hearing everybody's after hearing where everybody wants to go and what he wants to do from all of his friends, Nagisa quickly realizes he doesn't really know what he wants to do. And as he's on his way to go tutor Sakura, he actually thinks about it a little more, pointing out that he could in theory go fast track his way up to a proper school, and basically fast track his way up to the college that his mom wants him to go to, but beyond that, he has no idea what he actually wants to do with his life. And that because with his skills, he could be anything he wants. He's not sure if he wants to be an assassin, but he wants to be something, and he's not entirely sure what to be. But he continues to mull this over up until he actually goes to tutor Sakura, and Sakura eventually snaps him out of his funk, pointing out that she's done with her class, and that he's not supposed to be slacking off because she's supposed to be helping her get into a proper primary school. So. And he remarks that, and he simply apologizes, saying that he's been mulling over what he wants to be and isn't entirely sure what he wants to do with his time yet. And Sakura just kind of tells him point blank what he should be doing, pointing out that he's actually a pretty effective teacher and that he should consider doing that for a living. And while she also makes a kind of a cute remark about possibly being his girlfriend if that doesn't wind up working out, by that point Nagisa stopped paying attention to her, and she kind of trails off in his mind. And at which point he realizes that she's completely 100% right. Up until this point, he's been admiring Korosensei and all of his hard work, and realizes that that's the same thing that people see when people are saved by a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. They see something impressive about them that firsthand that makes them want to pursue that profession. And he realizes that being a teacher would actually be the perfect profession for him because because it's similar to how Korosensei operates. He could easily mold young minds and continue the next generation of basically class 3, the next generation, and just continue passing on the teachings that Korosensei taught him, and ultimately decides that's what he wants to do, and then proceeds to go into career counseling. When he's on his way there, he actually sees Korosensei cheering him on because it's the day where they go into the career aptitude into their entrance exams and try and figure out where they're supposed to go. And Korosensei is just here to cheer everybody on using doppelgangers, and everybody except Nagisa is confused because they have no idea what Korosensei is or why he's there or what exactly he is. All they see is a bunch of giants that seem to just have appeared and are cheering Nagisa on. And Nagisa is quick to point out ask Korosensei what he's doing and why he's even there. And Korosensei quickly merely points out that he's there to cheer Nagisa on see him off on the biggest day of his student career, and then remarks that he actually has to go cheer on the rest of his students. Without stopping, he and all of his doppelgangers just kind of up and leave and go to cheer on the rest of the students, remarking that they believes in Nagisa and that he should always keep an eye on what he wants to be, and then proceeds to take off. And Nagisa remarks that while he thinks he could be a damn good teacher, he doesn't think he'll ever be half the teacher Korosensei is. But in any case, then cuts to the next morning, and it's Valentine's Day. So obviously if confessions are going to go around, and everybody is remarking about who they're going to actually give their chocolates to. Okajima is kind of quick to point out that he hasn't gotten any chocolates yet, and that he's just very eager. And Meg even points out that he knows that he seems to be kind of a little bit too eager about receiving chocolates from these female students. But he really remarks he's just excited is all he is. But in case as that little back talk is going on, Kaede actually eyes the box of chocolates she has in her desk, and at which point Karma and Rio come over and start basically teasing her about who she actually wants to give the chocolates to, figuring it's Nagisa, and they wind up being right. And she kind of becomes a little bit flustered, pointing out that she knows that she does have feelings for him, but ultimately isn't entirely sure how she's supposed to go about doing it, since she's never really been in that position before. She's never had another classmate to talk to, and she's not entirely sure how to go about it. At which point Rio and Karma, mainly so that they could tease two people at once, decide to actually go through and help do reconnaissance to actually find out how different people actually confess their feelings. And so they quickly point out that Nagisa is the kind of person who just kind of thinks that Kaede hates him, and that the kiss ultimately estranged them as friends. And she's quick to point out that she's never really had feelings for a guy before, so she's not entirely sure how to go about it. But in any case, Rio and Karma then proceed to show her the different people and how they react. We see Sugino and Kanzaki. Sugino is over the moon about the fact that Kanzaki gave him a chocolate, whereas Kanzaki is just cool and collected about the whole thing. So which shows that their crush may or may not be a little bit one-sided. Maybe. Meanwhile, Chiba and Hayami keep the whole thing strictly professional because they respect each other as fellow marksmen. So their relationship is more of a platonic I love you, but not in like a relationshipy kind of way. So which is how they operate. And then Kirara Hazama gives Terasuka's entire group love notes as well, pointing out that she's written a list of love notes for all of her fellow students, although Terasuka is quick to point out that's more like a curse. And Meg and Isegai actually do also have a bit more of a professional relationship, since they hand out each other chocolates and stuff. And she hands him a whole bunch of chocolates and stuff for basically to share with his whole family, since she got them remarking that she got them from a Whole Foods, and that that's ultimately not all that fancy, but that she does respect him and wants to continue being friends with him. And remarks that they're probably going to, because they're going to be going to the same school anyway, so they might as well get used to the idea of being friends with one another. And also Karma, as one last thing, he remarks that Okuda actually gave him some chocolates, but remarked that it was that she basically remarked, "Here's your cyanide," which Kaede and Rio both remark isn't how Valentine's Day is supposed to go. But in any case, after seeing how everybody actually goes about it, Kaede quickly realizes that there is no one way to actually go and confess your feelings. And then she realizes that she just has to go about it in the way she wants. And Karma even reaffirms that, pointing out that as long as she's honest, that's all that really matters. But then also remarks that there is one little hitch getting in the way of her actually confessing her feelings, and that's Korosensei. Because as Rio and Karma point out, Korosensei is kind of in on the whole idea of shipping his students together, and obviously he's going to continue to spy on everybody who tries to confess on Valentine's Day. So ultimately Karma asks Kaede for something that'll keep him occupied for a while, long enough for Kaede to make her confession. And Kaede then proceeds to hand it over. We don't see what it is until much later, but she hands it over to Karma and then proceeds to make her move. She grabs the box of chocolates from her. She grabs her box of chocolates. She gets ready to go to confess to Nagisa, who is currently in the classroom, and is a little bit shy because, again, she's not entirely sure how she's going about it and isn't entirely sure where to start. But in any case, she proceeds to get ready to open the classroom door, only for Okajima to barge out, remarking that nobody had given him chocolates, and kind of raving like a lunatic, pointing out that refusing to believe that the girls didn't give him any chocolates, and proceeds to try and recruit Nagisa to actually help him go and look for chocolates, believing that somebody stole them. So Okajima barges out of the room, raving like a lunatic, and Nagisa proceeds to follow suit and goes to follow him to help him look, only for Kaede to stop Nagisa before he can wander off, and proceeds to try and confess her feelings. But realizing she doesn't actually know where to start, she then proceeds to ask him about what he wants to do and what kind of career he's picked out for himself. And Nagisa just kind of reaffirms what was established earlier in this episode, that he wants to be that his career choice is pretty clear, but he isn't entirely sure if he's going to be good at it. And Kaede quickly picks up that he wants to be a teacher, pointing out that he kind of idolizes Korosensei to a T, and points out that he's always admired the way that Korosensei actually molded young minds. So for that reason, she is pretty perceptive on the idea that he wants to become the next Korosensei. Basically, he just wants to continue what Korosensei was doing and actually teach several students with their mind and mold their young minds. And she can kind of respect that. At which point she then proceeds to try and confess her feelings and try to give him chocolates, only for Nagisa to suddenly spy Korosensei on a tree outside of the window, pointing out that asking why he's there, and as it turns out, he's distracted with Kaede's quote-unquote gift, which we will get to in a minute. But he then proceeds to pull out his gun and try to get a good shot on Korosensei, and Kaede can't help but notice his head-on determination and notice that he's most attractive when he's looking straight ahead and looking forward. And while Nagisa is going to go take a shot at Korosensei, he ultimately decides against it, quickly realizing that Korosensei is out of range of the gun and won't actually be able to get shot. And then proceeds to chide himself, thinking that Korosensei would leave himself that open to attack. At which point, Kaede then proceeds to give Nagisa her chocolates as a thank you for saving him, for saving her, and then remarks that she's always admired how hard he works, and that she hopes they'll continue to be friends in the future. Then proceeds to push him away before he can continue to try and wrap around what she's actually doing. Which is that as she later confesses, she's actually kind of putting her own feelings aside, using her acting skills to kind of keep Nagisa continuing to looking forward at the future, in that, because as she puts it, she doesn't want to get in his way and obstruct his vision, as it were. She wants him to continue to pursue what he wants to pursue, and if that doesn't wind up being her, so be it. At which point she decides that the best weapon in her arsenal is her acting skills, and ultimately decides that she'll continue to act to be his friend and continue to put her feelings aside for Nagisa's sake, because she wants Nagisa to be the best she can be. And with that, she then goes into the classroom. At which point Karma and Rio, who have been hiding out looking through the window this entire time, ultimately a little disappointed that it didn't pan out to anything. And then Rio finally decides to ask what exactly could be occupying Korosensei's attention that vigorously. And as it turns out, what Kaede provided was a picture of her sister. Basically, long story short, is that Korosensei is basically just locked in a confused mind state, somewhere between depressed and horny. So he's just stuck. But yeah, it's just a picture of Aguri Yukimura in a skimpy swimsuit, and Korosensei is both sad that she's gone and a little bit happy that she left him such a good gift. So, but in any case, it then cuts to Irina and Karasuma, who Irina has since invited to a private dinner alone. And ultimately tries to seduce him, which fails miserably, because as he points out, he has better things to do. But she ultimately tells him to sit down, pointing out that she won't try to flirt with him anymore. At which point they then proceed to kind of talk about what's going on with the future, that how the March deadline is going to come up soon. And then Irina drops a bombshell about whether or not the government is actually working on something to finally finish off Korosensei. And as it turns out, they are. As Karasuma confesses, he ultimately doesn't know what they're actually planning, because they're actually keeping him in the dark until it's actually completely finished. But from what we do see after he kind of trails off and goes into explain that they're obviously planning something. As it turns out, it's some sort of weapon designed to kill Korosensei. We don't see what the weapon is, but we know that it's supposed to be this big weapon that could in theory finish him off. So we don't have any idea of what exactly is going on with that. But I promise you, it will pay off in the future. But in any case, it then cuts back to the classroom where Korosensei is currently in the teacher's lounge, still ogling his present, as it were. When Gakuho Asano actually barges in the room and tries to assassinate Korosensei again, pointing out that he expected better from his best educator, and ultimately jokes that he's going to have to give Korosensei a pay cut for his unprofessionalism, which Korosensei ultimately begs him not to do. At which point the two proceed to catch up. And Gakuho and Korosensei then procead to remark that they've actually been pretty good, that they were actually pretty good rivals for one another, and ultimately Gakuho actually asks Korosensei a question regarding his assassination, which is that if he somehow survives the assassination at the end of the year, if he would be willing to come back and be a teacher again. Pointing out that he has the skills for it, and he could obviously continue to mold young minds and continue to be the best educator at Kunigigauka and continue to teach Class 3E, since he's obviously a great fit for the class, since he was able to turn Class 3E around in the span of a year, and while they aren't on the main campus anymore, they can return to the main campus whenever they want now. So yeah, he basically points out that Korosensei is actually a pretty good, damn good teacher, and it'd be a shame if he just kind of that he wouldn't be able to continue his teachings if he survives. At which point Korosensei remarks that he's flattered by Asano's offer, but ultimately remarks that he feels like regardless of whether or not he actually is assassinated by the March deadline, that he doesn't really want to be a teacher after this first year. As he points out, his job was done. He fulfilled his promise to Aguri. And ultimately, he points out that she was ultimately a great instructor, and that she would have been proud of the work he's done. And since he's done, and now that he's actually fulfilled his promise, he could actually just go off and do whatever he wants. He's probably going to rent a boat or something and just go on a tour around the world, because that's something he's always wanted to do with his time. And while Asano respects his decision, ultimately remarking that Yukimura would be proud of him, he ultimately asks ultimately states that a little bribe couldn't hurt, and then proceeds to pull out several chocolates, and the two proceed to catch up about his son. With Asano pointing out that Gakushu is actually turning out to be a lot like his father. Basically, he's just kind of going. By the start of freshman year, he's probably going to mold the classroom infrastructure into his own personal weapon that he can use against his father. And obviously, Korosensei remarks that he's actually turned out to be a fine young man, but Gakuho actually remarks that there's a little bit more that his son could actually learn. But in case, it then comes back to the restaurant where Irina and Karasuma were, and they've actually left and are actually on their way back to the main campus, or wherever they are going. It's not entirely clear, but. As they're walking back and as they're walking over an overpass, Irina actually stops and then proceeds to wonder how this is all going to shake out in the end, because as she points out, killing Korosensei or not is kind of a catch-22 situation, because on the one hand, yes, they can kill if they kill Korosensei, then yeah, they'll have saved the world, but she ultimately remarks if the world being destroyed is ultimately bad or not, because obviously if the kids kill Korosensei, then they'll have to live with that guilt for the rest of their lives, because obviously Korosensei has become kind of like a second father to all of them. So obviously Korosensei means a lot to them, and having to kill their favorite teacher at the hands of one of their classmates is going to traumatize them a little bit. But even if they don't kill Korosensei, they're going to have to live with the fact that they weren't able to kill him for the rest of their lives if he doesn't blow up. And obviously she points out that they're ultimately screwed either way. But at which point Karasuma ultimately remarks that Irina should quit, since as he points out, clearly her feelings have started to take more of the front wheel as she's continued to become more of a teacher role for everybody. And ultimately remarks that she should ultimately try and find another profession if assassination is starting to get a little bit too emotional for her. At which point she pulls out a gun, which Karasuma ultimately grabs in his hand and kind of restrains her a little bit. But she remarks that she doesn't really have anywhere else she can go, pointing out that while Karasuma may be able to say that because obviously he's from the government, he isn't an assassin. She points out that she doesn't really have anything else to do. She's killed too many people, lived this life for so long that she ultimately isn't sure what else she could do after if she decides to quit from being an assassin. At which point Karasuma ultimately remarks that she should come work for the Ministry of Defense, pointing out that that with her skills she could easily rise through the ranks. Points out that her skills could ultimately be applied to help people rather than hurt people, and ultimately remarks that she could pray for her victims at the shrine every morning. And Irina ultimately expresses confusion, pointing out that she's a devout Christian and that she doesn't go praying to shrines, and that it would be much easier for her to go to a church. And ultimately remarks that why would she go to a place with a bunch of people she doesn't actually know? Only for Karasuma to confess that there isn't a church near his house. And yes, it's very cute. And obviously Irina is a little bit flustered because eventually she realizes that Karasuma ultimately asked her to move in, and she isn't entirely sure how to respond, and that's how the episode ends. She's just completely 100% confused and flustered as to what she's supposed to do with that situation and with that information, because obviously Karasuma just told her to move in, and she's not sure how to take it. But in any case, yeah, that's how this episode ends. So yeah, this episode is ultimately about confessions all around, and this episode just kind of finally confirms that Karasuma does indeed like Irina that way. He plays it off as a cold, calculated bastard, and obviously he isn't always going to wear his emotions on his sleeve. But obviously he does like her, at least to the point where he asked her to move in with him. So obviously he does have feelings for her. And this was implied back in the Reaper arc, but because he ultimately gave her a rose, but played it off as him vanquishing an enemy in her honor. Here it's very explicit. He likes her and he wants her to move in. So yeah, that's how this episode ends. And also Nagisa just kind of affirms that he wants to be a teacher, and Kaede decides not to get in the way of that. That's ultimately what the bulk of this episode is. But in any case, yeah, that's my review of Assassination Classroom. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below, because I like art and and memes, and you should go check those out. I also post updates about the channel that you should definitely go check out if you want to make sure that you know what's going on with the channel, because I don't always upload every day, and sometimes I leave a little information there that lets you know why, so be sure to check that out. And also, if you guys want to actually go help support me, then be sure to check out my Patreon and also my website for different reasons. Obviously, there's a connected reason, which is that if you go help my Patreon, then I will actually list you on my website along with your other social information, depending on how you subscribe there. But go check that out if you want to. My Patreon is how you help support me. It's only a couple bucks. It helps me out. You guys get access to a bunch of cool perks. I'm always saying thanks, and it's some help me help you kind of thing. So go check that out. And on my website, you have written reviews. You should definitely go check some of those out. I'm trying to work on a couple of them. So if you guys want to go check that out, then by all means, go ahead. Yeah, I'm trying to work on more. Actually, I have a couple ideas for written reviews. I'm probably going to post one very soon, because there is something that came out that I don't think will work for a Let's Play, but I do think will work for a written review, because it's actually something that I am very happy is a thing now. So yeah, if you guys want to see that review, then by all means, I will let you guys know on my Twitter when that review actually goes up. But for right now, just remember that in the back of your head. And also, go support me on Twitch. I've been streaming Metopia for the past month. We're going unless it's a major holiday next week, and I don't think it is. We're going to be streaming Metopia, so be sure to go check that out again. We're actually are going to be continuing with Next Door and going to continue to see what the story for that actually is. So if you want to go see that, by all means, go check that out. I've also posted all the VODs over here, so if you want to go see those as well, they're here. And also, speaking of videos, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So, if you want to try something new, or stick with what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But, regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!